Good evening, नवाज़िशें, greetings. शौक थे, तसव्वुर था, बस लिहाज नहीं था। शौक थे, तसव्वुर था, बस लिहाज नहीं था। अफसाने थे, किरदार था, बस अल्फाज नहीं थे. So I must thank Delhi Food Walks for having given Delhi cuisine an utterance, which is so desperately required, because Delhi is the microcosm of India, and his cuisine has manifestly influenced the cuisine of this country and perhaps the rest of the world. I must confess, I'm used to speaking to an audience, and for the last 1 month, I've been speaking to the mirror, for which I saw a very interesting couplet, and I'd like to quote that couplet to you. ऐना हूं मैं अपने, ऐना हूं मैं अपने रूबरू हूं, ऐना हूं मैं अपने रूबरू हूं और कुछ हैरत ज़्यादा हूं. ऐना हूं मैं अपने रूबरू हूं और कुछ हैरत ज़्यादा हूं. ना जाने अक्स हूं, ना जाने अक्स हूं, चेहरा हूं या सिर्फ ऐना हूं मैं. Anyway, enough for poetry. So the last 1.5 months ago, we convened a whole program on Delhi at the India International Center, where I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Sapra. It was called Words in the Garden, and I was given the task of talking about Delhi cuisine. And I wrote out something which I am going to read out for you so that you understand where all I'm coming from and why we are actually talking about Delhi cuisine. So I quote, "In many ways, the history of Delhi is the history of cuisines, fragrances, fabrics, and architectural styles that came with us with various waves of immigrants over the century. These were so seamlessly adapted into the indigenous culture and tastes that their origins are often forgotten or mindfully overlooked." Our presentation today is a simple mosaic of the magnificence of Delhi's cuisine, generosity of Delhi's cuisine. That legacy often seems to be embattled and embedded all around, and yet it is endowed with an uncanny, time-tested resilience. In that resilience, or that perseverance, it has influenced the cuisine culture of India and perhaps its taste for the rest of the world. And I mean it. Now, having said that, my prognosis is very simple. My prognosis is nothing better illustrates the fact that the history of civilization is also the history of food and cooking. And if that be a factual belief, then Delhi's cuisine has in itself influenced India's cuisine and the world at large. And the examples of which are that if you look at the best crossovers that India has given to the world or to the rest of the country, at least 60% of those dishes or products or creations have their genesis right here in your city. Everybody says that Delhi is, it has no culture of its own. Uh, its weather is borrowed either from the Himalayas. These days, it's from the Himalayas or from Rajasthan or wherever else. Yeah, but if you're a mosaic, right, then you choose the best of the world and you make it your own. And that is what Delhi has done. Delhi has made all of us its own, wherever we came from. So, if you look at the history of Delhi, and it has been an uninterrupted city for at least 800 years. Okay, there is an ancient period. which I don't know much about. But I gained utterance in the leafy neighborhood of Nizamuddin. I grew up in Nizamuddin. Now, Nizamuddin, where I grew up in, is at least 800 years old, right? So we divide our conversations, Aina Hume, I'm speaking to myself, into ancient, which we will not discuss today, but I'm very happy to listen to anybody who has an opinion on ancient Delhi, the medieval period, which is older Delhi, that is Mehroli, Saket, Nizamuddin, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we come to the later medieval period, which is Shahjahanabad, which we call as Old Delhi. Remember, not older Delhi, but Old Delhi. So we covered the medieval era. Then we come to the colonial era, right? And that's when New Delhi is formed. So that is where the English have now uh, taken charge of our lives and our way of life and so on and so forth. Then we come to another era, which is called the Sanctuary of Delhi. Now, at the cusp of India's independence, me and my family, well, my family mostly, came from what was called undivided Punjab, and they made a home in Delhi, and so did many other refugees. So that's why we call it the sanctuary. And of course, subsequently, so many people now make a home in Delhi, and that's why it's called a sanctuary. So we've covered ancient, we've covered medieval, we've got New Delhi, which is the colonial Delhi, and then of course you have the sanctuary, and then of course comes this fantastic uh, induced by the metro. This great unity that the metro forged, what we call as the National Capital Region, right? Which so we will very quickly talk about all these four or five eras. On the ancient, as I said, कि किसको क्या मिला इसका कोई हिसाब नहीं, ना मुझ में तसव्वुर है, ना मुझ में वो ख्वाब है. So as I said, I will listen to you. The significance of Delhi's cuisine and the way it changed completely was in the medieval period, when these Central Asian hordes descended on Delhi. Why did the Central Asian horde descend on Delhi, you will ask? Well, simply because it was a patch of land in between two great kingdoms. There was Prithviraj Chauhan, whose citadel was Ajmer and so on and so forth, and possibly the border of which was Rao Pithora. And then there was Harshvardhan of Kannauj, or of, strangely enough, Thanesar, which is very much in Haryana right now. It's called Kurukshetra now. And then another significant element was it was on the banks of a river. Yes, the river Yamuna, or Jamuna, it was called then. And therefore, the land was fertile, there was water. And why did the Central Asian come here? Well, mostly because they were being persecuted by the Mongol hordes. But one thing is very clear, they certainly didn't come to India because of the heat and dust. They came to India or to Delhi because this is the land of milk and sugar. No, not honey. Honey was introduced to the world by the Greeks. We, India, introduced the world to sugar. Greek literature talks very extensively about what Alexander's troops saw as reed-like substances, mithas, sweetness. They had never experienced sugarcane. So, yes, the Central Asian hordes came because of milk and sugar. Now, they were battle-weary bachelor men, right? This was largely the first. Now, when you have bachelors and they are men, there is a great need to uh, eat, to drink, to get together. Togethering is important. Now the locals, whoever they were, were very particular about eating individually. वो खुद अकेलेपन में खाते थे और माय ओन प्रोग्नोसिस इज कि वो थाली परोसते थे या परोसी जाती थी तो वो थाली में खाते। ये सेंट्रल एशियन बड़े बस्टिंग सिटी से आए, समरकंद, बुखारा, they were used to these bazaars, and that's how the first shops of what we call as pret-a-manger food was introduced, which is ready to eat breads, ready to eat meats, ready to eat vegetables. And a lot of this is available if you read medieval Indian literature or the accounts of Amir Khusro. Lots of poetic reference to that. You'll find that. So this khamiri roti that we still enjoy was an introduction of that period. Strangely enough, the samosa came with the Central Asian hordes. Now the samosa may have come in some other fashion, but it did come in that era. Now, it also coincided with the whole Sufi movement of what they call as silsila, the succession. That is why you find, the two of the great peers of the Sufi faith. That is Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, close to Mehroli, and Nizamuddin, Hazrat Nizamuddin and Nizamuddin are entombed there. Okay, so they became sacred spaces. Then, of course, came the Mughals, right? Shortly after the Central Asians came the Mughals. Now, the Mughals had already seen that a cake had been baked. What the Mughals did was to add icing to the cake, fondant. They put roses and decorations and so on and so forth. And yes, they did contribute extensively towards Delhi's cuisine. So, if you were to break it up in a simple layman's language, let's look at curry. The curry that we knew 800 years ago was called salan. Under the Delhi Sultanate came the khalia, infused with turmeric, largely for troops to travel. The turmeric is antiseptic, it's also a preservative. And then under the Mughals came the khorma. Because by this time the spices had been introduced to Delhi, and of course the Portuguese had introduced chili, right? And the water of the Yamuna or the Jamuna was arsenic, and the Hakims went to Emperor Shah Jahan and said, Huzur Ala, Badshah Salamat, ये जो लाल मिर्च है, ये जो अंग्रेज लाए हैं, it can help us ward off the poisoning that's taking place to the Shahjahanabad people. So yes, significantly, the entire capital of Delhi moved once to Shahjahanabad, which we now call as Old Delhi. So the Korma also came, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, came New Delhi, which is, after the so-called mutiny or the Battle of Independence in 1857, I think. Now, the British, of course, transformed our spaces completely. So, Delhi became, older Delhi became destitute. Old Delhi became a little mayus or morose. And then, of course, what was built was this fantastic new capital called New Delhi, with its ramparts and its central vista and so on and so forth. The irony is that the British, unfortunately or fortunately, may have built this great grand city because of pomp and splendor, but they governed India largely from Simla, all right? But that, as I said, is another story. Under the British, our food became very colonial. So my parents typically were children of the colonial period, and they quite loved, honestly speaking, what they called as English food, right? Which is what we were oriented towards as European food, as fried fish and chips, chops, puddings, uh, this baked uh, vegetable au gratin, so on and so forth, and interesting puddings like roly poly uh, and things like that. Of course, jelly and custard and fruits and so on and so forth. And a lot of this remnants, and those of you who go to Vengas extensively and enjoy their eclairs and their pastries and their patties, I love the patties by the way. All of this came part of the great colonial introduction. This whole Anglo. In fact, many clubs in Delhi still serve that colonial kind of food, and there are a few restaurants now which do club cuisine and so on. Then, of course, came the independence of India, and the what we call as many of us were taught to call it partition. Uh, Many of you call it the independence, and then came these refugees, hordes of refugees, mostly from West Punjab, but also from East Bengal. Now, the Punjabis had this tremendous influence on the cityscape. Like the Central Asians who came and introduced a lot of these ready-to-eat places ready-to-eat places. So did the Punjabis. They loved eating and they loved drinking, and you found uh, that there would a lot of these little tandoors started opening up. I know that in Nizamuddin, where I grew up, there was a nice family tandoor which served fabulous food. We loved going there. Of course, we weren't exactly proud that we were going out for dinner to a tandoor, but who was to tell? And then, Delhi prospered. I mean, it sort of prospered, and we'll go into those segments a little later. And then, of course, the next big stage that came is under, I think, under the valiance and the leadership of Mr. Dixit, when the metro was introduced, and Delhi then became this national capital region, which unified large tracts of Noida, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, and the rest is history. Now, what young people eat, I'm as confused as my generation is, but I know they have a lot of what Veer Sangvi calls Sino Punjabi food, chow mein, dim sum, momos, pizzas, uh, all kinds of stuff. Okay? So I have no opinion on the ancient, and I have very little opinion on the modern or the national capital region. Okay, so let's very quickly look at some of the sub-products that I was talking about, and let's look at what the Central Asians gave us at the early medieval period. So the samosa may have come in, with dry fruits, but the samosa that the world knows is the samosa that we now all eat, which is available even in London and in America and in Africa and many parts of Asia, is the samosa that has the peas and the potato, right? At best, there will be a variation, some paneer, some mince, and so on, but the samosa. And the relishes that go with the samosa, the khatti chutney and the meaty chutney, that is from Delhi. Okay, so we are saying that very often, in spite of the fact that the Central Asians gave us fantastic food and the Mughals gave us fantastic food, a lot of that food gets lost in translation. The samosa, for some reason, originally came as sambusa or whatever, has been India's first great crossover. It's available anywhere in the world. And let me tell you, it's not just the diaspora is eating it, the whole world is eating it. Right? You go to a high-end store in London and you can buy one samosa for one ringgit for £5 or whatever. Then, of course, the naan. We all love the naan, right? So the world adapted to the naan like it's going out of fashion. Great naan. And the naan was introduced in some fashion during the Central Asian period because the tandoor, the lohe tandoor, the iron tandoor was introduced to Delhi by them. And if you go to Nizamuddin, where, as I said, I was born and now currently in the news for all the wrong reasons, you will still find some of the old eateries, Bazaar-e Dukana, who still have the lohe ka tandoor and still make that khameri roti or whatever. But I'm talking about the naan that we now know it. The naan with the onion seeds, which is made in the mud tandoor, which was introduced by the Punjabis, I think. Let's go on to the next one, which is the do pyaza or the salan. So as I said, the salan was the first curry. Now the salan also is known by the do pyaza. Now the do pyaza it is known as because वो बरकत होती है. उसपे दो टू पोर्शंस ऑफ प्याज पड़ते हैं, बहुत प्याज. ओके, ईरानियन से पूछेंगे तो वो कहेंगे वो दो प्याज, हिंदुस्तानी से पूछेंगे वो कहेंगे बहुत प्याज. सो जो करी है वो सालन है, वो प्याजा है, वो अंग्रेजों के ज़माने में उसको स्टू. पर आज भी अगर आप जाएं, आप पुरानी दिल्ली में जाएं, उससे पुरानी दिल्ली जो कि हमारी दिल्ली है निज़ामुद्दीन की, उसमें जाए तो आपको ये स्टू या दो प्याजा ज़रूर मिलेगा. उसका नेम इज नाउ मोर पॉपुलर इज स्टू, बट एक्चुअली इट्स दो प्याजा. सो वो भी दिल्ली की. चाट, अब वो चाट भी जो है कहाँ से आई? आई थिंक मोस्टली फ्रॉम ओल्डर दिल्ली, बिकॉज दिस इज एन इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ द बनिया कम्युनिटी. See, one community which remained in Delhi seamlessly, भाई वो in the season of arrivals and departures, कोई आया कोई गया, कोई उधर गया इधर आया. The Banyas have remained in Delhi for at least 800 years. And if you go to Chandni Chowk and so on and so forth, you'll find that they still have the mainstay of the wholesale trade, and some of the Havelis are still in very good stead. So the Banyas introduced the chaat, and they embraced, I think, a lot of this food which is currently available on the streets of Delhi. Then the next thing, let's go to the biryani now. Yes, so the biryani is कहाँ से लोग कहते रहे. I keep seeing these ads on papers कि यार वो पर्शिया से आई है, ये है वो है, और पर्शिया से बिरयानी कैसे आ सकती है उनको खुद नहीं मालूम. The court language of the Mughals was actually Persian. Biryan actually means frying, so fried rice. It was introduced during the Mughal period, and yes, it was introduced, and now it has become a world-besting favorite. Then, of course, we come to the Nargisi kofta. The Nargisi kofta was also introduced in the British period, and you know the Scotch eggs that the English or the Scottish people serve was actually Nargisi kofta. Veer Sangvi told me that the origin of the Nargisi kofta of the Scotch egg was actually Nargisi kofta. And if you go to some finer places in my part of Delhi or older parts of Delhi, and you make a request, जो हम कहते हैं फरमाइशी खाना, जो स्ट्रीट फूड होता है वो तो स्ट्रीट पे रहता है, जिसकी रिक्वेस्ट करनी पड़ती है, जिसको यू हैव टू ऑर्डर, इज कॉल्ड फरमाइशी खाना. उसको हम वी कॉल इट, उस पे आप ऑर्डर कीजिए, बहुत लजीज और नफीस होता है. Then of course the Punjabis introduced the tandoori chicken, miracle, the king of kebabs. It was flying all over the world. Air India put it on its first class passenger of having tandoori chicken. And the tandoori chicken was adopted because now look what's happening. Tandoori chicken. So as you simplify the nomenclatures of food, its acceptance worldwide becomes much more feasible. Similarly was the butter chicken. Butter chicken, simple. The world embraced it. आइए आपको खिलाइए. तो याद रखिए कि जो nomenclatures हैं, जहाँ simplify होते हैं, उनको adopt किया जाता है. Then of course I found when I was in ITC Maurya that the Arabs love palak paneer. There were so many requests by King Hussein, Jordan, the king of Morocco, the Saudi Arabian king, भी पालक पनीर खाए, बहुत उनको अच्छा लगता है. Then of course there is malai kofta. For some reason, it's a very popular thing. It's not my idea. I googled it actually. And then of course the garam masala. If the garam masala, all this is from Delhi. गरम मसाला. सो जब भी आप दिल्ली की खाने की बात करिए, हैशटैग दिल्ली गरम मसाला, दिल्ली मलाई कोफ्ता, दिल्ली पालक पनीर, दिल्ली तंदूरी चिकन. Because Delhi needs this magnificence, it needs this credit. So what we are saying is that the sum total of our conversation is that, and this is just the beginning. I hope that we'll carry on these dialogues. But having said that, we have covered the four important reasons, which is we've covered medieval India, medieval Delhi, we've covered New Delhi, we've covered Sanctuary Delhi, and of course this modern Delhi, where, as I told you, I'm a little hapless. I don't really know what young people are eating today. So my conversation must come to an end by this beautiful couplet by which I heard. It's not my couplet, and I'm going to read that couplet out, or I memorized it actually, and that is called "जिसकी खुशबू से भी उठ जाए फिजा, जिसकी खुशबू से भी उठ जाए फिजा, जिसकी रंगत से भी आ जाए मजा, वो नफीस और लजीज हर लुक्मा, वो लफीस और लजीज हर लुक्मा, जिसका जायका हो एक दूसरे से जुदा, खाके खुश हो जाए मेहमान, बैठाते हैं वही दिल्ली का दस्तरखान." So thank you very much for your time. I started a little late because, as you know, I live in a complex and my neighbors were playing music and dancing and clapping. And I must end now. But as I said, if anybody wants to be in touch with me or ask me questions, there's lots more to be spoken about. Once again, thank you, Delhi Food Walks, or should I say Delhi Food Talks, for having given utterance to Delhi cuisine, because this is not about me or you, it's about Delhi, right? The very microcosm of the idea that we call India. Please mail me at diwane.gautam.anand@gmail.com, or follow me on Diwan Gautam Anand Facebook or Diwane Sharar on Instagram. Thank you very much, and I hope that you've all downloaded the Aragya Setu app. It's keeping a lot of us safe. All right. So in these difficult times, till we meet again, bye bye.